architect, and what I do is I design and I oversee the construction of buildings. I've worked on small projects like housing renovation for a private individual. I've also worked on many housing developments for developers, and I've worked on hospitals, and most recently I worked on the MRT for a company that's building the MRT. It's called Gamuda. In terms of education, you'll need to go to university, and you will need both a bachelor's and master's of architecture. Typically it takes 5 or 6 years to do it all at one go, but you can break it up and work a few years in between. As far as I know, there are no standard prerequisite subjects in order to be accepted into an architecture degree program, but I think it's safe to say that math will be required. So if you want to be registered as a professional architect after you graduate, you'll need to work 2 years and then take the professional exams. Now these are country specific, and typically they would cover subjects such as building development regulations for that country. They would also include the building contracts of that country. In terms of skills, the basic skills to be an architect is the ability to draw and to think in 3 dimensions. You don't have to be a really good artist, but you need to be able to communicate your ideas either on sketching and through computer modeling. So these days, it's pretty essential to have computer skills, meaning CAD, BIM, Photoshop, 3D Max, and yes, people skills are also important. And in Malaysia, you need to work with a lot of different groups of people. So being able to speak Bahasa Malaysia, English, Mandarin, and even a few dialects is going to be really helpful. The other important skill is project management skills. These you typically pick up along the way, and obviously you need design skills, and that you will learn in university, and you will also hone it as you work in practice. After university, I applied for a job at an architecture firm, and I got accepted. My first job was me helping my boss with PowerPoint presentations. So I would go with him when he went to meet with developers to show them ideas for developments. It was only probably about a year after graduation that I got the opportunity to design houses for a housing project in Seremban. So that's how I got started. So what I enjoy about my job is I like to think about buildings. I like to imagine how they will look like, and I like to create it in my mind and then develop it on paper. And it's very satisfying when the building is actually built. So that's what I enjoy. As to what makes it difficult, well, construction is generally a challenging field. Typically, projects take a long time, at least a few years. So a lot can go wrong during that time. Your clients could run out of money, so the project could be shelved at that time. Or you could find out really late that the project site is much smaller than what was in the survey drawing. So then it's back to the drawing board for you. But what I think is really the most difficult part of being an architect is when your client asks you to do something that you think and you know will not be good for the people who live around there, and or may have a negative impact on the environment. So that's really difficult, and in such instances, as a professional, you owe a duty of care, which means you're responsible to protect the rights of and safety of the general public. So then you have to come up with a really creative solution that is acceptable and convincing to your clients. When I was young, I lived in a small town, and one of the things we did for fun was to visit construction sites. We'd go into the houses before people move in, and so I think I've always been fascinated by buildings and the idea of creating something that's big enough to walk around in. Well, architecture is not a glamorous job, even though it may look glamorous from afar because we create really beautiful buildings. But in reality, we get dusty and sweaty a lot of times, and going to building sites is actually quite dangerous. And like a lot of other jobs, late nights and long hours, especially when the deadline approaches. My advice for aspiring architects is that they should try and intern at an architect's office. And once they get into a degree program, they should also try to intern during the holidays and try to work with different types of offices, different sized offices, so that they can see how it works. And they should read a lot, and they should travel widely so that they can experience a lot of different types of buildings, and they can see how people live and work, because it's really important for an architect to be interested in how people use spaces, and because your job is to provide spaces where people live, work, play, learn, dream.